Story time about how I crashed my dad's really expensive car. So a little background information. My mom had just got remarried to my stepdad 3 years ago, and he was this rich asshole who owned a bunch of food trucks and thought he was the shit. Well, at the time I also had a boyfriend. And we had only been dating for like a month and a half. But my boyfriend would always beg me to let him drive my stepdad's car. And I always said no because that was like his child. Like he had children. He could care less about them. His car was more important. Anyway, so the one weekend my parents are out of town and one of my friends was throwing a graduation party. So that whole day my boyfriend was trying to talk me into taking the car, and I already knew where my stepdad hid the keys. So I just decided I wouldn't drink that night and I would just take the car. He kept asking me if he could drive, but clearly I said no, because this kid literally told me that he crashed the first 2 cars that he had. So we get to the party, we're having a good time, and one of my friends tells me that everybody's taking pictures with my car outside. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I crashed my dad's very expensive car. So like I said, everybody's taking pictures of the car, but I decided to let it go at first. I mean, there was one point where I went outside just so that way I could kind of let everybody know, hey, you're taking pictures with my car. Well, half an hour later, my boyfriend and I decided to leave, and he's obliterated. Like, we probably got 50 feet from her house, and then I had to stop the car so that way he could get out and throw up in somebody's yard. Anyway, so he gets in the car, we're on the way back to my house, and my house was like a 20-minute drive away. Well, we were 5 minutes from my house. At this one intersection, I get a green light and I go to make a right, and I accidentally hit a car turning out of the bar parking lot. So I'm literally freaking the fuck out. And my boyfriend's in the seat next to me crying for some reason. So the guy in the other car calls the cops. The cops show up, they call my stepdad and my mom. My boyfriend went to the hospital, he had alcohol poisoning. Well, my boyfriend told his mom that it was all my fault and I'm grounded for 6 months. Story time about how my best friend got with my boyfriend. Whenever I was in 6th grade, my mom had put me in this summer camp, and that's where I met my best friend, Jenna. Well, any boys that I liked at summer camp, Jenna would try and go after them. So fast forward, Jenna and I never went to the same school, which was so nice because I could literally tell her about any guy that I liked and she would not know who the hell it was. Okay guys, real quick before we continue with this story time, today's story time is sponsored by my favorite investing app called Public. With the app Public, I always know which stocks are trending and what my friends and other awesome people are investing in. So make sure to go click the link in my bio to start investing with as little as $1. Okay guys, back to the story. Well, I decided to invite her to my school's football game, the one that my boyfriend was going to be playing at. So I'm getting ready at my house and we're about to go pick her up. And she tells me that she's going to wear one of her dad's Hawaiian button-up shirts and some jean shorts. So I decided to wear the same thing because I didn't want her to feel uncomfortable because she never met anybody at my school before. Like for part 2. Story time about how my best friend got with my boyfriend part 2. Real quick, sorry this part is really late. TikTok would not let me post this video at all. So I pick her up and she's wearing a completely different outfit than what she told me she was wearing. And the whole time we were at the game, she was bothering me about who my boyfriend was. And because I knew she was a hoe, I definitely did not tell her who it was. Well, the one week I couldn't make it to one of my boyfriend's football games, and Jenna just decided to show up to my school's football games even though she didn't even fucking go there. Well, the one night she met my boyfriend. She texted me about it that night saying, oh, he's super cute, da-da-da-da-da. I asked my boyfriend what he thought of her, and he said that she was weird and she was hitting on all of his friends. So I thought I didn't have to worry about them getting together, right? Wrong. He had invited me to this party and said that I could bring her, so I decided why not give her the benefit of the doubt. Jenna and I had planned on leaving that night because my mom couldn't pick us up in the morning. Well, Jenna ended up spending the night, and I went back there in the morning, and there were hickeys all over my boyfriend's neck. Story time about how my neighbor killed my dog. So a little background information. When I was about 3 years old, my parents got me a German Shepherd. And my neighbors who lived next to us absolutely loved our dog. And so did their kids. Like their dad literally put a doggy door in the fence, so that way our dog could go back and forth from our house to his house. Well, when I was about 8 years old, my neighbors decided to sell their house. So he told us that he had to take out the doggy door because the people that were buying his house hated animals. Well, the people who had just bought his house, they ended up moving in before he could take out the doggy door. So our new neighbors asked us if we could put like a piece of plywood in front of the door so that way our dog couldn't get through. And they said that they would do the same to their side of the fence. So my dad said, yeah, he put a piece of plywood in front of there. Well, my dog, Gabe, The one night that my brother let him out, he ended up getting the plywood off of the doggy door. Well, my brother literally had to crawl through the doggy door to get the dog before one of them saw him in the yard. Like for Part 2 about how my neighbors killed my dog. So like I said, my brother let the dog out, and my dog got the piece of plywood off of the door. And my brother had to crawl through the doggy door to get my dog out of our neighbor's yard, so that way our neighbors wouldn't wake up and know that he got through. But whenever my brother went to go get Gabe, he realized that my neighbors didn't even have a piece of plywood on their side of the fence or anything. So my brother told my dad, and my dad went over there the next day to talk to them. And he pretty much said, I'm not going to have a piece of fucking plywood on my side of the fence if you're not going to be doing anything on yours to prevent my dog from going into your yard. And they were like, oh, well, your old neighbors never took out the doggy door. And my dad was like, that's not our fucking fault. Well, then our new neighbors said, if your dog all of a sudden becomes sick or just does not come back, don't be surprised. My dad decided to replace the door himself. Well, once Gabe realized that the doggy door was gone, when we would let him outside, he would literally just sit there and bark at the fence. Well, 2 weeks later, Gabe ended up passing away, and we found out it's because our neighbors were giving him rat poison. Story time, my best friend cheated on his girlfriend with me. So a little background information. So Gavin and I had been best friends ever since we were little. We lived in the same neighborhood, and my parents and his grandparents were like pretty close, I guess. But like everybody in our neighborhood was close with each other. And I always had a huge crush on him. And I would try to like subtly tell him that I liked him. But he would always be like, ew, don't joke with me like that. Like, that's not true. And eventually, I just kind of got the hint that that was his way of telling me, I don't like you. Stop before I tell you, in a mean way. So when we were in middle school, he was always having these like 2-day relationships with all these girls and everything. And me, not so much, because sis didn't have a glow up until she reached like her sophomore year in high school. And the thing was, I wasn't that best friend who would be like, ew, don't date her, like she's ugly or anything like that. Like, I would totally respect all of his relationships, even if they were 2 days long, but he would literally still block me. Well, the one day we were hanging out at his house, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend cheated on his girlfriend with me. So like I said, the one night I was at his house and he was on my phone and he was asking me who all these guys were on my Snapchat. And I told him that I had been talking to them and he was just being super toxic. He was talking shit on every single one of them. So eventually I started dating this guy Trey, and after that he texted me saying that I was gross and everything else, when the next day he literally got a girlfriend. But weirdly enough, he didn't block me that time. He actually started texting me more, saying how him and his girlfriend were so happy together, da-da-da-da-da. And unlike him, I would be supportive. Well, the one night at 2 a.m. he came over my house and he was like, I don't have feelings for my girlfriend. And I'm like, okay, then why are you with her? And then he has the nerve to say, don't you get that I like you? Like, really? Well, eventually we cut off all communication and he was still with this girl. Well, the one night he asked me to come over and talk, and we ended up doing the nasty. And then he blocked me on everything after he said we should both leave our girlfriends and boyfriends. Well, I ended up telling his girlfriend what we did, and they also come to my family cookouts. Story time about how I was dating the school shooter. Yeah. So a little background information. I was a sophomore whenever this all happened, and it was around October. Well, the one day I was sitting at lunch with my group of friends. We're all sitting there having a good time when one of my friends dares me to go over and sit with this one kid. And he was sitting alone. He was kind of shy. And of course I did, because they had offered me $10, guys. Can't beat that. So I go over there, we start talking, and I realize that he's actually really nice. And he's really hot. I never really saw what he looked like because he was always wearing hoodies during school. Anyways, we started hanging out more, and eventually he said that he liked me and we started dating. The relationship seemed pretty perfect. Well, 6 months in, I think he started to trust me more, because he had told me about this one group of girls that he absolutely hated. This group of girls just happened to be my friends. I didn't tell him that I was friends with these girls because they were considered controversial, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I was dating the school shooter. Like I said, I had never told him that I was friends with these girls because they were controversial, but he would go on for hours about how much he hated these girls. He went as far to say that he wanted to kill them. I didn't think anything of it at first, because him and I had more of a sarcastic sense of humor, but he started to sound more and more serious every time that he would talk about it. Well, after us dating for 10 months, he calls me the one night, and he starts telling me about how he's going to shoot up the school. He had told me his entire plan of how he was going to do this. Now, he must have thought that we were like ride or die relationship, when in reality, I was recording everything that he was saying. After we got off the phone, I wrote an email to all of the office staff in my school, but I fell asleep and never finished the email. I woke up the next morning, finished it. I had texted my friends not to go to school that day. I had already missed the bus. I rode my bike to school that day. I ran to the principal's office, nobody was there, and that's whenever I heard shots in the hallway.